As he was returning to his car, Zimmerman asserts that Martin confronted him, demanding to know what his problem was. Zimmerman replied that he had no problem, at which point Martin basically said, well, now you have a problem, and punched him in the nose, breaking or fracturing it and knocking him backwards onto the sidewalk. According to eyewitness testimony, Martin jumped on top of Zimmerman, punching him in the face and pounding his head into the concrete. At this point, of course, Zimmerman can't see and can't breathe, right? His blood is pouring back from his nose into the back of his mouth. He's choking, he can't see, and he can't breathe. So he's already in a desperate panic, as anybody would be in that situation. Witnesses report Zimmerman was screaming for help. The mothers of both Zimmerman and Martin report that it was their sons who were screaming for help. One witness described Martin pummeling Zimmerman with an MMA technique called ground and pound. According to Zimmerman, Zimmerman was having his head pounded, against the concrete pavement, and he knew that he was close to the grass, and he was trying to shimmy up to get his head to be pounded on the grass rather than the concrete because he was terrified of losing consciousness and dying. When he was shimmying himself, according to him, his coat rode up, and Martin saw his gun and said, "You're going to die tonight, motherfucker," and reached for the gun. Zimmerman grabbed the gun, shot at Martin. This is important when people say shot Martin. Well, if he's half blind and choking and it's raining and it's nighttime, I mean, the idea that he can sort of aim, he's just pulling and shooting wildly, that would be my guess. The bullet passes through Martin's chest, injuring his heart, and he may have been able to speak for 10 to 15 seconds, and Zimmerman reports that Martin said, "You got me," and then he may have lived from 1 to 3 minutes afterwards. So, of course, you could easily say, well, Zimmerman is just making up a whole bunch of stuff, he's saying whatever is convenient and so on, and for those who say that the stand your ground law has anything to do with this, I can only tell you that you're actually not correct about that. Stand your ground is if somebody is approaching you, you don't have the duty to retreat. If somebody is on top of you and pounding you, there's no possibility of any kind of retreat. So the stand your ground law is irrelevant to this. Is classic self-defense. But the important thing is that Zimmerman's account is corroborated by all available evidence. And the prosecution did not overturn any of the available evidence which corroborates Zimmerman's accounts. There were no injuries on Trayvon Martin's body except for the gunshot wound and injuries to his knuckles, which obviously come from punching someone. Zimmerman's head had lacerations. His nose had been broken or fractured. He had sustained 2 black eyes and a coccyx injury. And Zimmerman had grass stains on the back of his jacket, which would be in accordance with his testimony. And a police detective actually lied to or misled Zimmerman while he was interviewing him after the incident. And he said the entire assault had been caught on video camera. And Zimmerman's response was, "Thank God." Not unimportant. Now, people say Zimmerman should not have followed Martin. Well, it's irrelevant to the law. If you look at anything that happens, there's always a causal chain of effect that goes beforehand. And if you take any of those dominoes out, something wouldn't have happened. But let's say Martin was someone who was going to do another home invasion. He wasn't, but let's say he was going to do another home invasion, and Zimmerman had decided to stay in his car. Well, then you say, well, he should have gotten out of his car because then somebody died, right? So you can go back and sort of replay anything and say that there are different choices that could have been made, but that's only with the full information that you have looking back, right? Hindsight is 20/20. The point of this trial, as the point of any criminal trial, is to determine whether a defendant accused of violating one or more criminal statutes will be found guilty or acquitted. That's all it's about. Will a defendant accused of violating one or more criminal statutes be found guilty or acquitted? Now, in his neighborhood watch capacity, Zimmerman decided to watch Martin. The police dispatcher said that Zimmerman did not need to follow Martin. This is not an order. This is no binding authority. This is a standard line, not situation dependent and not authoritative or enforceable in any way whatsoever. Like if a police officer tells you to do something, you have to obey. If someone at the other end of a 911 call tells you, we don't need you to do that, or it might be better to do this, not authoritative, not binding in any way, shape, or form. So if you see someone, hanging from bushes at the edge of a cliff and you call 911 and the guy's like, help me, I'm about to fall. And you say, I need help, this guy's about to fall off a cliff, and they say, well, our nearest cruiser is 10 minutes away. And you say, well, I'm going to go help him. They actually will tell you, we don't need you to do that. They actually cannot give you orders, because they're legally liable if they give you orders. So the fact that the dispatcher said we don't need you to do that is not binding, is not authoritative in any way, shape, or form. So it has nothing to do with the law whatsoever. Zimmerman decided to keep an eye on Martin. That's a perfectly legal action. In fact, it's encouraged by the police as a whole. They often work with neighborhood watches to make sure that this kind of stuff occurs. There's no law anywhere in the United States that prevents one person on a public street from watching another person on a public street. There's no right of privacy when walking down a public street. So, Zimmerman broke no laws by being in the neighborhood watch, by believing that Martin was acting suspiciously, by calling the police to tell them what he was doing and asking for assistance, by declining the dispatcher's suggestion to stop observing Martin. Not illegal in any way, shape, or form. Continuing to observe Martin without making contact or interfering with his free actions is all perfectly legal. Now, when Martin was bugged, annoyed, frightened, or angry at the man he referred to as a creepy-ass cracker, when he went up to Zimmerman and said, what the fuck is your problem, homie? You didn't break any law. You can verbally confront people. That's fine. And when Zimmerman said, I don't have a problem, when he tells Zimmerman, well, now you have a problem, all perfectly legal. If he'd said to Zimmerman, fuck off, stop following me. I'm like right here. I live with my father's and his girlfriend. Perfectly legal. And would have ended the problem. There would have been nothing further. However, right, so these are the steps around the law. The moment that Martin punches Zimmerman in the face, well, now he's committed a crime. So nothing Zimmerman did was illegal. But what Trayvon Martin did in punching him in the face was illegal. Now, in some jurisdictions in the US, the first punch might be classified as a misdemeanor. Still a crime, but depending on the mood of the DA, might be a misdemeanor. But once Zimmerman is on the ground and Martin attacks him again, it is no longer a misdemeanor. This almost automatically becomes felony battery, a significant crime. Once Martin allegedly said, you're going to die tonight, motherfucker, and began smashing Zimmerman's head into the concrete, either or, this becomes attempted murder. If we accept, right, this is important to remember, if we accept Zimmerman's testimony and the eyewitness accounts and the physical evidence, at this point he can't see, he can't breathe, he's being told he's going to be murdered, and his skull is being smashed repeatedly into concrete. Forget race, forget age, forget cherubic pictures, forget all the portraits that the media has painted of a racist, of white on black crime. At this point in the interaction, Zimmerman cannot breathe. He cannot see. He's just been told he's going to be murdered, and his head and skull are being smashed repeatedly into concrete. And he's got a gun on him, but he has waited for over 40 seconds from the beginning of the altercation. He still has not fired his weapon or reached for it. If that situation, if we accept what the evidence and the eyewitnesses and Zimmerman's testimony say, if we accept that, you can reject anything you want. I mean, you can make up anything you want in this world. If we accept that, if that doesn't justify self-defense, then there's no such thing as self-defense at all. And this is why the police let him go, because they couldn't find any evidence to counteract his claim of self-defense. It doesn't matter. I mean, the media has been unbelievably reprehensible in this, saying that Zimmerman referred to young black men as fucking coons when he actually said it's fucking cold, which I guess it was. They edited a tape to make him sound racist. So they edited a tape and played Zimmerman saying something like, he looks suspicious, he looks like he's up to no good, he looks black. You know, so these sort of, but that's not what happened. What happened was, he looks suspicious, he looks up to no good, and the dispatcher said, what is his race? Is he white, Hispanic, or black? He looks black. Right? He was actually asked about the race, and the media edited that out to make him look racist. I mean, you're in a matrix of race baiting, which is going to have catastrophic consequences unless we hold fast to the facts. He said, these assholes always get away. He's not referring to black people because he's friends with black people. His business partners with black people. His wife is best friends with black people. He tutors black kids for free. He's talking about thieves. There's a plurality of young black male thieves in this situation. That's who he's referring. I mean, that's my guess. To paint him as a racist. Anyway. So let's talk a little bit about race. We can have frank discussions as adults with facts, I hope. So some of the writers were, after this incident, talking tragically as I have two, the writer in the New York Times said, I have two young black teenage sons, and I'm terrified of them going out into the world and getting shot by whites. Well, okay, let's look at some numbers. I don't mean to shock anyone with some facts. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, between 1976 and 2011, there were 279,384 black murder victims. Appalling, shocking, wretched, terrible. And about 262,621 of those black victims were murdered by other blacks. So I don't think it's white on black violence that you need to be majorly concerned about. And let's look at some potential roots of black on black violence, or black violence as a whole. It's tragic. It's terrible. I mean, there's a whole, obviously the history of racism, history of violence perpetrated against blacks being stripped of rights and property. The black family was actually quite strong in the 1950s. There were illegitimacy rates lower than that of the white community. Welfare has been a huge problem. Blacks are exposed to terrible, wretched, horrible educational systems. There's a war on drugs, which has disproportionately been tempting for black youth to get involved in as a way of getting easy money, at the same time as there's been a death in manufacturing and a huge spike in the minimum wage, which has meant lower skilled people don't have as much in easy access to, the basic three things that you need to do to get into the middle class, right? You need to finish high school, you need to get and keep a job for at least a year, and you need to not have a child out of wedlock. Those are three things. Statistically, if you do those three things, you are fine, you are set to go. But there's so much that's working against the black youth. I have incredible sympathy for what was going on with Trayvon Martin and so many other black youth. It's terrible.